In this video, we're going to see how we can get notified when data in a Firebase database changes. So in other words, we've already covered several videos. Number one, where we create the Firebase database. Number two, where we save from a device to Firebase in the cloud, just like so. In this video, we're going to pick up and we're going to see how a device can get notified when data in the cloud changes. And it can take some action upon that notification. So if we take a look here, we have a traditional Firebase real-time database. At the moment, I have one item saved into the database. And just for a demonstration, I want to show just how quickly we can save data into the database. I'll pick another tree like a pawpaw, a Semina triloba, common pawpaw, and we'll put this at the fountain square. And we'll say a really nice native tree, as the pawpaw is native to the Cincinnati area. So I choose Save, and you notice how quickly, when I chose Save on the device, it added this record into Firebase. It was a matter of milliseconds by the time it synchronized that data. So very, very close to real-time synchronization there. Now what we need to do on this side is we want to see how to be notified when the data changes from Firebase. So first of all, I'm going to go to the activity that we were just looking at the GPS of plan activity. And I previously put together this Firebase database.get instance when I was going through the overview of Firebase. So now let's continue and let's set up a listener that will notify us when something changes. It's going to be about 12 lines of code, not all that bad, although it does, we do have to put together kind of like a callback method, which gets a little bit tricky. So what I'll say is Firebase database, and I should actually make that a local variable because I made it local. I made it local in my other method, and I now have two variables with the same name. So just a moment, just a little bit of housekeeping here. There we go, Firebase database, and then I'll say .getReference, terminate with the semicolon. Now remember, we're in the onCreate method. This is the method that is invoked when our activity runs, when it's created and visible. That's the first method to get invoked in the Android activity lifecycle. Nonetheless, Firebase database.getReference, Control-Alt-V. I'm going to save this into a variable called reference, and now I'm going to say reference.child. This is saying, where do I want to listen for changes? Well, let's remember what our database looks. We have our database plant places 26, and then right under that we have something called specimens. Essentially what we're saying is we want to listen to specimens and anything underneath. Specimens theoretically could have some sibling nodes or branches, if you will. What we're saying is we just want to subscribe to the specimen area in any changes that happen underneath specimen, either additions, removals, or edit, or anything like that. So I say reference.child, and then we'll say specimens. Now, this is where things get interesting, because I'm not going to terminate with a semicolon. I'm going to go to a new line, and I'm going to say add value event listener. And this is essentially something that's going to listen for changes from Firebase. Now, take a look at what it requires. It requires something called value event listener, which is actually an interface. That's the variable that we have to pass into this method. Right now, we don't have a value event listener. So what we can do is we can make one in line. The syntax is a little bit goofy because you just have to be aware we are defining a new class that implements this interface, and we're doing all of that within this method call. So all of it within these two parentheses, which is where things get a little bit goofy. As a matter of fact, so I don't forget later, let me go ahead and terminate this method call with the semicolon. Now, I can take a little shortcut in Java. If I want to implement an interface into a class and I want to do it in line, I can do an anonymous inner class, which means I'm declaring a class that implements an interface and I'm not giving that class a name. Sounds really, really goofy, but here goes. I simply say new value event listener, and you notice that it was kind enough to autocomplete for me, which is really nice because it just saved me a major pain in the rear in doing all this myself. So within the onDataChanged, I'm going to say, I want to take a look at this thing called data snapshot. I'm going to say data snapshot, which is essentially the data that we're getting back from Firebase. So data snapshot.getChildren. So give me the children of this specimens node. So data snapshot.getChildren. We want to save this into a variable, so Control-Alt-V, And yeah, data snapshot.getChildren, and we'll just save it as the iterable type. That's fine. Now I'm going to say for each, and I'll say data snapshot child colon children. So data snapshot is a construction from Firebase that just means here's a look at the data. I've put it in a nice envelope for you. Now what do you want to do? Now we need to get the data out of that envelope. So we can say child.getValue. But the trick is, if we take a look at our Firebase database, it doesn't really know what the data is. It's really kind of like JSON because it's just a series of name-value pairs. So we have to tell it the data type that it is, and luckily it uses a little trick with generics here where we can simply say, I stored the data in here as specimen DTO type, so specimen DTO.class. And that's how I want to get the data back out. Now take a look at this. You've seen me do the Control-Alt-V shortcut several times, and we know the Control-Alt-V shortcut, as we saw up on line 162, 163, and even on 168. What the Control-Alt-V shortcut will do is it will see where my cursor is. If I'm on a method call, it will look at the return type of that method. It will declare a variable of that return type. It will take this method call, take the result of the method, and store that into the variable. So look at the variable type that it creates when I hold Control-Alt and press V, and I choose child.getValue. Holy smokes, look at that. It created a variable of type specimen DTO. How's that? Yeah, that's because I passed the specimen DTO in as the generic type to this getValue method, and it knows that's what it needs to unmarshal and return, a specimen DTO. So now within this, just so we can kind of see what's going on, I'm going to do a toast. So I'll say toast.makeText. Context is going to be gps.aplant.this. Then the message is going to be just, I'll say data, and then I'll say plus specimen DTO. Hang on one second, value.toString, which is our value is our, you know what, let me make that a little more clear. Let's call this specimen DTO is a variable, just like so. And then down here we'll say specimen DTO.toString, just like so. Whoops. And one more thing we need to do then is we need to say toast.lengthLong, and then finally .show. And there we go, and save. Now I do need to make this toString make any sense, I do need to override the toString method in specimen DTO. So let me go ahead and do that. I navigate to specimen DTO, not within a method, but within the class. I start typing toString, and for this I can return, let's say, plant name plus, and then space, and then we'll say plus description plus space plus location plus space. Whoops, little off there. Plus, and then I'll say lat, and we'll say plus latitude plus LNG, and then we'll say plus longitude. So we can give this, we can essentially have the toString method return a representation of the object. So I save, I deploy, and while it's deploying, I'm going to go ahead and snap a breakpoint inside this event listener. We'll put it right there, and let's see what happens. The application is up now, and we would normally see this Firebase database change from another mobile device. But in our case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change it right here, right in the Firebase console itself. That will have the same effect as if a mobile device had changed it. So we can just change something silly. So for the pawpaw, I have a really nice native tree. Let me say with edible fruit, like that. Now as soon as I hit enter, the debug breakpoint is going to catch. So I hit enter, and if you kind of look in the background, you can see this is now lighting up in orange, and the breakpoint is caught. And let's take a look at what we have. Data snapshot children, the first specimen DTO is what? Our eastern redbud. And it puts the toast up. Our second specimen DTO is what? Our pawpaw. Now take a look at the pawpaw. A really nice native tree with edible fruit, Fountain Square, Cincinnati. So sure enough, the change that I made has synchronized down to my device very quickly. Now, of course, you're going to have network considerations to think about in a live device, but this is Firebase database on the internet, and I'm running it locally on my laptop, so it's not like the Firebase database is running right here. It actually is running over the internet. Let me take the breakpoint off, and let's see how quickly it responds without the debugger engaged. So I bring up Firebase, breakpoints off. For the red bud, I say a really nice tree that is a legume. Legume is a special kind of plant because it cooperates with mycorrhizal fungi, which is able to source nitrogen from the atmosphere and give it to the plant, which is really nice because that's less fertilizer you have to buy. But nonetheless, that's not why you're watching this video, is it? So what I'm going to do is I haven't made the change yet. The change will take effect as soon as I press enter. So watch the timing between when I press enter and when you see the toast start to appear on my screen. So enter, and almost immediately you see the toast appearing down here at the bottom of our screen. So that's a quick look at how we can synchronize data from a cloud database like Firebase down to our device. I hope this video has been helpful, and I look forward to reading your comments. Thank you.